Vanessa, please stop it. I don't like the way you are touching me. Just stop. I don't like it. Please.
Sandra pleaded, but all to no avail. How did Sandra get herself into the cruel hands of Senior Vanessa? Let's find out. In the heart of Abuja, the capital of Nigeria, the Charles family house stands tall in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The sun casts a warm glow on the well-maintained lawn. Inside, the house is neat and orderly, almost too perfect. A large clock ticks loudly in the living room. Mrs. Charles, stern and impeccably dressed, is busy ironing clothes with quick, sharp movements. Her face is a mask of discipline and order. Sandra, a bright-eyed, energetic 13-year-old girl, bounces a basketball against the floor. She dribbles it expertly, her eyes focused, as though she's on a court. Mrs. Charles turns sharply, her eyes narrowing as she watches Sandra. Sandra stops dribbling, sensing her mother's displeasure. Mrs. Charles reminds Sandra of her rule: no playing inside the house. Sandra quickly apologizes, her cheerful demeanor fading. Mrs. Charles then questions Sandra about spending time with boys again. Sandra tries to explain that they were just playing soccer or basketball. It's harmless, she thinks, but her mother's stern gaze says otherwise. Girls her age shouldn't be running around with boys, her mother insists. It's not proper. Sandra nods obediently, but her eyes wander to the window, as though searching for freedom. Suddenly, the front door opens, and Mr. Charles steps inside. He looks exhausted, his shoulders slumped, a travel bag hanging from his hand. The trip was cut short, his flight got cancelled. Mrs. Charles barely acknowledges him. Sandra's eyes light up as she runs to her father, throwing her arms around him. He pats her head and calls her princess, managing a small, tired smile. Mrs. Charles watches them from the other side of the room, her jaw tight, eyes hard. Later, as the sun begins to set, Sandra is outside, bouncing her basketball alone. The street is quiet, the sky a blend of orange and purple. Other kids, mostly boys, play soccer nearby. Sandra watches them for a moment, longing to join but not daring to. She continues dribbling the ball, her mind lost somewhere far away. Sandra is in primary 6, and the common entrance exams are just weeks away. The house feels tense. Mrs. Charles moves briskly from room to room, her voice sharp as she reminds Sandra to focus on her studies. The weight of expectation hangs heavy in the air. But Sandra's mind is elsewhere. She sits by her window, staring outside as a group of boys play soccer down the street. The ball bounces back and forth, echoing the rhythm of her own restless heart. She imagines herself on a vast soccer field in secondary school, running freely, playing fiercely, feeling alive. That's the dream, the freedom she craves. But Mrs. Charles has different plans. She walks into Sandra's room, holding a glossy brochure. The cover reads, Crestwood Girls Boarding School, Discipline, Excellence, Integrity. The stern look in her mother's eyes says it all. The decision is final. Sandra's heart sinks. Mrs. Charles hands Sandra the brochure. Sandra takes it reluctantly, her eyes skimming over pictures of girls in stiff uniforms, perfectly lined up, smiling blankly. Stories of the strict routines and harsh discipline in the school flood her mind. Whispers of how the older girls bully the younger ones and how the teachers enforce rules with iron fists. It's a far cry from the freedom Sandra longs for. Mrs. Charles sits down beside Sandra, her face softening slightly. She tells Sandra it's for her own good, that Crestwood will make her a fine young lady. Sandra nods, swallowing the lump in her throat. Her father isn't around to intervene. He's away on yet another business trip. It's just her and her mother, and her mother's voice is the only one that matters. That night, Sandra lies awake, clutching the basketball she keeps hidden under her bed. She closes her eyes, imagining herself dribbling down a court, the wind in her hair, the cheers in her ears. But when she opens them, all she sees is the Crestwood brochure, staring back at her like a sentence she can't escape. The common entrance exams came and went, and Sandra finally received her admission letter. It was the school her mother had chosen, the all-girls boarding school with a reputation for strict discipline. Sandra's heart sank when she saw the name of the school printed in bold letters. She had hoped for a school where she could explore her love for outdoor sports, where she could join the boys in playing soccer and basketball. But her mother's decision was final. On the first day, the atmosphere was a mix of excitement and anxiety. Girls scurried around, dragging heavy metal trunks and worn-out mattresses to their assigned hostels. Sandra was assigned to JSS 1C. The hostel was crowded, noisy, and smelled of disinfectant and stale air. As she settled into her corner, she met Mitchell, her bunkmate. Mitchell had a warm, friendly smile and eyes that sparkled with curiosity. They clicked almost instantly. As they unpacked their belongings, Mitchell leaned in and whispered, "Listen, Sandra, there are some things you need to know about this place." Sandra listened attentively as Mitchell explained how the senior girls, those in SS1 to SS3, ruled the hostels like queens. They expected absolute respect and obedience from the juniors. If they ask you to fetch water, do it. If they tell you to wash their clothes, don't complain, Mitchell said, her voice dropping to a serious tone. And whatever you do, don't get on their bad side. Some of them can be really mean. Sandra nodded, her chest tightening as she took in the unwritten rules of the hostel. This was nothing like what she had imagined. The school felt more like a battlefield, and she was just a new recruit, trying to figure out how to survive. Days turn into weeks, and Sandra begins to settle into the rigid routine of Crestwood. Mitchell remains her closest friend, a source of comfort in a place that often feels cold and unwelcoming. One evening, the hostel is quieter than usual. Some of the seniors are in a meeting with the housemistress. Mitchell has gone to the bathroom, leaving Sandra alone in their section of the room. As Sandra organizes her books, a shadow looms over her. It's Vanessa, a tall, intimidating SS2 girl with a reputation for cruelty. Vanessa's eyes are dark, her expression void of warmth. She orders Sandra to follow her to the storage room. Sandra hesitates, her heart pounding, but Vanessa's grip tightens around her wrist. The corridor is empty, the only sounds the distant hum of a generator and the muffled chatter from other dorms. Inside the storage room, the air is stale and thick. The door closes, and Sandra feels the walls closing in. Vanessa's smile is cold, her words laced with venom. What happens next is a blur, a nightmare that Sandra cannot fully grasp. Her pleas go unheard, her cries swallowed by the walls. The air grows heavy, suffocating. When it's over, Vanessa straightens her uniform, her face expressionless. She leans in close and whispers a chilling warning to Sandra, "Speak to no one, or things will get worse." Then, Vanessa walks out, leaving Sandra alone, trembling, the room spinning around her. Mitchell returns to find Sandra curled up on her bed, eyes hollow, her hands shaking. Mitchell asks what happened, but Sandra shakes her head, biting back tears. The words won't come out. The fear is too raw, too consuming. That night, Sandra lies awake, her eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. The darkness feels deeper, the air colder. The once noisy hostel is now deathly silent, and in that silence, Sandra feels herself slipping away, piece by piece. The power dynamics in the hostel are clear. The seniors, especially those in SS2 and SS3, have made it their mission to assert their authority over the juniors. Sandra and her classmates are regularly ordered to wash clothes, fetch water, and do the seniors' dishes. Some of the seniors treat it as a game, delighting in bossing the younger ones around. Others do it out of sheer boredom or meanness. But there are a few seniors like Vanessa, who take things further, much further. Vanessa's cruelty goes beyond chores and commands. When no one is watching, she finds ways to get the younger girls alone, cornering them in dark corridors or empty rooms. Her touch is invasive, her whispers laced with threats. Sandra has felt it. So have others. One hot afternoon, all the students gathered at the assembly ground. The principal stood on the stage with a young woman in a white NYSC uniform. The woman was tall, strong-looking, and had a friendly smile. The principal raised her hand, and everyone became quiet. "Students, we have a new corper posted to our school," she said. "Meet Corper Christie. She will help with physical education and other activities." Corper Christie stepped forward and smiled warmly. "Good afternoon, everyone," she said. "I am happy to be here. I believe sports can teach us discipline, teamwork, and confidence. Let's have fun and learn together." Sandra watched her closely from the crowd. Corper Christie seemed different from the other teachers, friendly and easy to talk to. She felt like someone Sandra could trust. Mitchell leaned close to Sandra and whispered, "She looks nice." Sandra nodded, her eyes still on Corper Christie. For the first time since she arrived at the school, Sandra felt a little hopeful. Maybe Corper Christie would understand her love for sports. Maybe she could finally have someone to talk to. One afternoon, after a sweaty PHE class, Corper Christie gathered the JSS 1C girls under the big tree behind the sports field. The girls sat on the grass, some tired, some chatting, while Corper Christie stood in front of them with a serious expression. "Listen up, girls," she said, her eyes moving from one face to another. "Today, we're going to talk about something very important: self-defense and speaking up when someone makes you uncomfortable." The girls became quiet. Sandra's eyes were fixed on Corper Christie, her heart pounding. Corper Christie continued, "You have the right to say no if someone touches you in a way you don't like. Don't stay silent. Speak up. Talk to a trusted adult, a teacher, your housemistress, or even me." Sandra's chest tightened. She glanced at Mitchell, who looked back at her, eyes wide. Later that evening, after dinner, Sandra and Mitchell waited by the staff quarters. When Corper Christie walked past, Sandra nervously called out, "Corper Christie, can we talk to you?" Christie stopped and smiled. "Sure. What's wrong?" The girls glanced at each other. Mitchell nudged Sandra gently. Sandra took a deep breath and said, "It's about Senior Vanessa. She does things to us that we don't like." Christie's face turned serious. "What kind of things?" Sandra swallowed hard, her hands shaking. "She touches us, in places we don't like," she said, her voice breaking. Corper Christie knelt down to their level, her expression soft but firm. "Thank you for telling me," she said gently. "You did the right thing. I promise, I will handle it. You're not alone." Sandra's eyes filled with tears as she nodded. For the first time, she felt a small sense of relief. Someone finally knew the truth. The next morning, Corper Christie walked straight to the principal's office, her face set with determination. Inside, she sat across from the principal and told her everything Sandra and Mitchell had said. The principal listened quietly, her expression growing darker with each word. "This is serious," the principal said, her fingers drumming on the table. "I'll handle it." By noon, Senior Vanessa and her parents were seated in the principal's office, along with two other senior girls known for causing trouble. Vanessa sat stiffly, her eyes fixed on the floor, while her parents exchanged confused glances. The principal cleared her throat, her voice firm. "We have received serious reports against you, Vanessa," she said. "Reports of inappropriate behavior towards junior students. Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Vanessa remained silent, her jaw clenched. Corporal Christie spoke up. "Two students came to me in tears. They were scared, but they spoke up. This kind of behavior is unacceptable." Vanessa's mother gasped. "Vanessa, is this true?" Still, Vanessa said nothing. The room was tense. Finally, the principal leaned forward, her eyes cold. "Vanessa, you and these two girls have crossed the line. We cannot tolerate such actions in this school. You are hereby expelled, effective immediately." Vanessa's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. "Expelled?" "Yes," the principal said firmly. "Your parents will take you home today." Vanessa's parents stood up, their faces a mix of anger and embarrassment. Vanessa followed them out of the office, her shoulders slumped, her face pale. From the hallway, Sandra and Mitchell watched as Vanessa and the other two seniors walked out with their bags. Vanessa's eyes met Sandra's for a brief moment, but there was no anger, only defeat. Sandra exhaled deeply, her chest feeling lighter. For the first time in a long while, she felt safe. The next day, all the students were assembled under the hot sun. The principal stepped onto the podium, microphone in hand, her face serious. The students fell silent, sensing that something big was about to happen. "I have an important announcement to make," the principal said, her voice echoing through the courtyard. "Senior Vanessa and two other students have been expelled from this school for serious misconduct against junior students." A murmur swept through the crowd, quickly growing into loud whispers. Some students gasped. Others exchanged shocked glances. Then, as the news sank in, a cheer erupted. The juniors clapped and shouted, some even jumping with joy. The air buzzed with excitement, a wave of relief washing over them. The principal raised her hand, and the noise slowly died down. "While this matter has been addressed, we understand that some of you may still be struggling with what happened. Therefore, we are introducing a therapy session for all affected students. We want you to feel safe, heard, and supported." Sandra stood quietly among her classmates, her eyes fixed on the ground. Mitchell squeezed her hand, giving her a reassuring smile. Later that afternoon, Mrs. Charles arrived at the principal's office, her face drawn and pale. She sat across from the principal, her fingers nervously clutching her purse. "I heard about the therapy session," she said, her voice strained. "I had no idea Sandra was going through so much." The principal nodded. "She's been through a lot. But she was brave enough to speak up." Mrs. Charles swallowed hard, guilt tightening her throat. "This was my idea, sending her to this school. I thought it would be good for her. I never imagined." "She'll be fine," the principal said gently. "With the right support, she will heal." Mrs. Charles shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "Sandra loves sports. Basketball, especially. But I kept holding her back, thinking she was just wasting her time. Maybe I was wrong." The principal leaned forward. "We have a basketball team. We do various sporting activities in the past, but it was discontinued by the former principal. Perhaps it might be time to reignite it, and Corporal Christie is an athlete. She might be the long-awaited messiah we've been waiting for. Maybe Sandra can join them. It might help her regain her confidence." Mrs. Charles nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. Yes. That's exactly what she needs. Corpus Christi wasted no time bringing life back to the school's sports program. Every afternoon, the basketball court echoed with the sound of bouncing balls and shouts of encouragement. Corpus Christi led the training sessions, her voice firm yet motivating as she guided the girls through drills, strategies, and techniques. Sandra joined the team without hesitation. For the first time since coming to the school, she felt like she truly belonged. On the court, she was in her element, dribbling, passing, shooting. The other girls were surprised by her skill, especially the way she moved with confidence, her sharp passes and swift footwork catching them off guard. One afternoon, as Sandra made a perfect layup, Corpus Christi clapped her hands. "Where did you learn that move?" she asked, eyes sparkling. Sandra grinned. "From the boys in my neighborhood. They taught me everything." Corpus Christi nodded approvingly. "Well, keep it up. We've got a competition coming up. And I want you to shine." A few months later, the much-anticipated inter-school basketball tournament arrived. The school's team, now known as the Crestwood Eagles, stepped onto the court in their red jerseys. The stands were packed with students, teachers, and parents, all cheering loudly. From the start, the game was intense. The opposing team was strong and aggressive, their star player towering over Sandra and her teammates. But Sandra held her ground, her eyes sharp and focused. She moved swiftly, dodging defenders, stealing the ball, and setting up perfect assists. In the final quarter, with the score tied and just seconds left on the clock, Corpus Christi called a timeout. The girls huddled together, sweat dripping down their faces. "Sandra," Corpus Christi said, locking eyes with her. "This is your moment. You can do this." The whistle blew. The ball was passed to Sandra. She dribbled down the court, her heart pounding. The crowd roared as she dodged two defenders, jumped, and released the ball. The ball soared through the air, spinning perfectly. Then, swish. It went through the net just as the buzzer sounded. The crowd erupted. The Crestwood Eagles had won. Sandra's teammates rushed to her, hugging and cheering. From the sidelines, Corpus Christi watched with a proud smile. Sandra looked up to the stands and saw her mother, Mrs. Charles, clapping with tears in her eyes. Sandra had not only helped her team win, she had found her voice, her strength, and her passion. The news spread like wildfire. Crestwood's basketball star, Sandra Charles, had been awarded a full scholarship to a prestigious basketball academy in Spain. It was a dream come true, a chance to refine her skills, learn from top coaches, and play on an international stage. The principal called for a special assembly to make the announcement. Standing on the podium, she beamed with pride. "Today, we celebrate one of our own. Sandra Charles has been selected to join the Spanish Basketball Academy on a fully funded scholarship. Let's give her a round of applause." The entire school erupted into cheers. Mitchell jumped up and down, clapping wildly. Corpus Christi wiped away a tear, her heart swelling with pride. Sandra stood there, stunned, as her classmates swarmed around her, hugging and congratulating her. Later that evening, back in their small living room, Sandra sat between her parents. Mrs. Charles couldn't stop smiling. "I always knew you had it in you," she said, holding Sandra's hand tightly. Mr. Charles, who had returned from one of his long business trips just to see Sandra off, patted her back. "Make us proud, okay?" he said, his eyes shining. "We're so proud of you." The day of departure arrived. The airport was bustling with travelers, but all Sandra could focus on were her parents standing in front of her. Mrs. Charles hugged her tightly, her eyes wet with tears. Go and be great, Sandra. Show them what you're made of. Mr. Charles pulled her into a firm embrace. Stay focused. Stay strong. We're always here for you. Sandra nodded, her own eyes brimming with tears. Behind her, Mitchell and some of her teammates waved goodbye, shouting, "Go, Sandra! Go make us proud!" Corporal Christie stepped forward and handed Sandra a small pendant. "For good luck," she said, smiling. Sandra held the pendant tightly, took a deep breath, and walked towards the boarding gate. As she turned to wave one last time, she saw her parents, her friends, and Corporal Christie all cheering her on. With her suitcase in one hand and her basketball in the other, Sandra stepped onto the plane, her heart pounding with excitement. This was her chance to shine, to rise above the past, and to finally live her dream.